Welcome to another episode of Unlocked. We've got something a bit special today, a one-on-one, a heads up with somebody we find really entertaining, really interesting, and a really fascinating way, I think, of looking at how we unlock the media. Now, I've been a journalist for 25 years. I was on the telly and the radio all the way through the Brexit referendum, the build-up and the fallout. And I noticed a real change in the media, in the mainstream sense, at least. Now, today's guest is Jun Slater, Facebook personality extraordinaire, came from nowhere, has now got 104,000 followers. She's gonna blush when I call this Lancashire lass a real tastemaker. And you do that through a combination of acidic monologues. Now, you're not afraid of a swear word. You call a spade a spade. No one and nothing is safe. The BBC, Richard Branson, Graham Norton, Gary Lineker, you name it. Question Time, Newsnight gets both barrels from you, Jun. So it's a brilliant opportunity to talk to you about how the media landscape has changed. Now, I've given you quite a build-up there, Jun. So what I want to start with, my love, if I can, is why did, an ordinary person like yourself decide to step up and become a Facebook influencer?
It was coming up to the referendum, and I had my own reasons for. I was considering voting Remain. I didn't think of any other reason to go any other way because I had a second home in the Alps. I was using the pet passport scheme and EHICS card. Travel was easy, Eurotunnel, etc. Why would I want to vote Brexit? And my husband said, you never pay any attention to this. You live in cloud cuckoo land. You haven't got a bloody clue what's going on. We need to Brexit. And he said, you need to get more involved in politics. Anyway, I naturally did because the Channel Tunnel got decidedly more and more unsafe as we were travelling. We had to avoid certain times because our cars were getting rocks thrown at them. So as the changing scenery at the Channel Tunnel got decidedly more scary, I thought, what the hell's going on? So I decided to look into it. And when I found out a few things about our sovereignty, I didn't really even understand what sovereignty meant, I'll be honest. I thought it was the Queen and a crown. So I decided to look into it. And like anything, I'm like a dog with a bone. I got stuck into it, found out what was going on, decided to offer my services to Vote Leave, which I did every weekend. Got a bit beside myself one weekend and I stood on a bench in the middle of the town centre. I was like an evangelical preacher. I was like Billy Graham. I was going at it. And I thought, this is no good. You're interrupting people doing the shopping. So I came back. I was absolutely so annoyed with it all. I went on my Facebook page and I just did this quick video and I went, the EU. And I was so angry. And I said, Tony Blair, do one. Gordon Brown, do one. David Cameron, if only, do one. If you don't like these leaders, you can get rid of them. You can tell them to do one. You can vote them out. You can't do that with the EU. And you can't even name the 5 presidents without using Google. And I did this quick video about why we should leave the EU. And I switched off and put my Hoover on and took my dog as a walk. And David said, what does this viewing mean at the side? You've had 1 million views. I went, 1 million views of what? And this video had 1 million views. It had 2 million in the end because it proved that people were just as sick of it. Then I discovered my back message box and I went in and there was just hundreds and hundreds of messages from people about Brexit. So I thought I better clean myself up with a bit more knowledge. So obviously my knowledge bank has grown and grown. But coming up to the referendum, because people didn't understand what was going on. The political class talk amongst themselves and it's all very understandable and they understand the jargon. The guy going to do a shift at Asda, stacking shelves, trying to keep his head above water, hasn't got the time to take all this on board, so he needs someone to explain it to him in layman's terms. So I set myself up as that person. So what I did, coming up to the referendum, I did fixed time calls with groups of people like hairdressers, engineers, anybody who wanted to know about Brexit, because they had this feeling that they wanted to Brexit, but they didn't quite, they just knew we ought to be free, that we were strong enough to be free. So I did these fixed time calls in messages on Facebook like this. and there'd be 6 hairdressers sat around with the sandwiches at lunchtime or whatever's going on, and they just asked me questions, and if I didn't know it, I said I'd find out. I also have a very reliable source that Boris Johnson put me on to, who's been a great pal ever since and has helped me an awful lot. So I did these fixed time calls, and I listed, because I make lots of lists, and I listed down all the people I spoke to, and the majority of which were not even going to vote in the referendum. They weren't going to vote. They weren't going to turn out and vote. And in a 9-week period, I converted 5,000 people to vote for Leave, from not voting, not changing their mind from Remain, from not being voters. So there was clearly a need for some sound advice and information. So I don't think I am right. I just want to get it right, and I think there's a big difference. So the thing I noticed through all this, having had a background in advertising, was the bias of the media, which got worse and worse. It was bad coming up to Brexit, but appalling afterwards. So I started timing stuff. So, for instance, Darren Grimes, who's a friend on Facebook through Brexit, Darren was on one day, and I timed him, and he got overall, in the ping pong of the discussion, he got 1.25 minutes of space, airtime. The other 2 Remainers, he had 2 Remainers against him, and they tallied up 4.9 minutes. This went on and on and on. So overall, I just kept doing it, and I used Sky mainly, and I noticed that the Remain camp, we got about 38% of the news airtime. Positive Brexit people got 38% of the time. The rest of it went to pro-Remain. The other thing I noticed is with Sky News in the background, every single outside broadcast had the EU flags flying in the background. And I said, this stinks, because you're using Sky's audience, which is millions. If you stood up there with a Kellogg's Cornflakes flag, they'd move you on. They'd move you on. If you stood up there, buy Kellogg's Cornflakes, they'd say, hang on, you're using our audience, clear off. But they didn't. They allowed the EU flags. So add to this is all subliminal stuff to make Remain look more popular. And despite all this, we won the vote, despite all the tactics. And this data, I believe, is quite valuable, because 150 people a day contact me. Some of them are balmy, and I tell them. And some of them have genuine questions, so I get back to them. But 150 people a day has worked out about contact with 138,000 people plus. Coming up to the election, this was so frustrating. Coming up to the election, I got more, I was up to 200 messages a day. So these people were telling me in messages that they were not going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. Nobody wanted Corbyn. The media were telling us it was neck and neck, if you remember.
Before we get into the general election, I just want to pick up on a couple of points that you made there. I mean, one of the most difficult things with you, June, is getting a word in edgeways, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing, because one problem that we had during the whole run up to the European election, I don't know if you ever saw me on Sky News, I don't know if you ever timed me on Sky News, but I was always the only leaver.
Yeah,
I was always the only leaver on every TV show that I was on. Apart from one time when I was on with Nigel Farage, and that was on the Jeremy Vine show. How ironic that we met through one of TV's biggest Remainers. But the interesting point about all of this is that I always felt, because I'm from Nottingham, I would go back to Nottingham a lot, and I would always go back to London and say, you guys haven't got a clue what's going on out there. Because I was going to car boot sales, chip shops, pubs, in the queue at Greg's, getting a pound of sausages, and the temperature on the streets was so very different from the picture we were being painted in the media. Why do you think they got it so wrong?
Well, I don't think they got it wrong. I think this was a determined campaign to make it look different. They didn't get it wrong. They didn't want to know anyway. I think, as far as the media goes, I think it's been an assault. I don't think it's been poorly judged, as in they've got it wrong, like they've made a mistake. This has been a determined effort to make it look different. So they haven't got it wrong. They've got it how they want it. They're now supplying a narrative. They're not reporting news. They're telling you what you should think.
And those some of your funniest videos are when you phone up the BBC and you complain, don't you, to some poor soul who picks up the blower and, and you're recording it, and
Yeah.
it's really funny. But also, you've been doing the same thing, haven't you? You were taking a timed percentage of the positives and the negative stories. So tell us, for those who haven't seen those videos, you've got to go and have a look. But tell us about that.
Well, I set a page up called Mrs. Battersby & Co. because how it started, because I do respond to all my messages, when the news was on about Nissan's going to close down. This is a prime example because you can get the videos up easy enough. Nissan's going to close down. There's going to be massive redundancies. So my mate Norman Fox, an avid Brexiteer who lives in Sunderland, contacted me and said, June, they're taking apprenticeships on. They do it every year at this time, they take on new apprentices. And I said, well, why would you take new apprentices on if you're going to shut down? So he said, I'm telling you now, they're taking on apprenticeships. So I rang Nissan and I thought, how can I get through? Your best defence is to pretend to be a harmless little old lady. Little old lady fits at 62, but I'm not harmless. So I rang Nissan up and I do this character called Mrs. Battersby. So I said to Nissan, hey, hello, love, I hope you can help me. My grandson is apple of my eye, he really is. God bless that lad. He's thinking of taking up one of your apprenticeships, you know, love, but I've seen it on telly, they're making him redundant, and as God is my witness, that lad deserves more than being made redundant if he's studying for an apprenticeship. I got the shaky voice and everything. And this girl said, well, actually, you've come through to the press office. Bloody lucky was I. She said, well, we're not making anyone redundant. She said, we are taking apprenticeships on, and I can tell you now. So the conversation, I said, well, can I tell you? Bless your cotton socks, love, for telling me that, because this lad did, and I went on like this. So I recorded it all. So there we have the mainstream media, Alan Bolton, telling us, oh, doom and gloom, Sunderland's going to have no car plant, no Nissan car plant. And here I am in the press office, speaking to this woman. She thinks I'm a little old lady concerned about my grandson. I get the truth. I ring back 3 hours later as a blogger with 104,000 followers, and she said, no comment. I used a different voice, of course. She said, no comment. Another example was it P&O ferries? P&O ferries. So P&O ferries, they were going to cut schedules, and there was going to be none of this and none of that. I rang P&O up as Mrs. Battersby. So I said, hello, love, I hope you can help me. Now, look, love, here, I'm just booking my first cross-channel ferry, and I am nervous because our Stan, you know, he got killed at sea. God rest his soul, he got killed. He had a watery grave. And she's going, oh, no, you won't have a watery grave. She was a really nice girl called Elizabeth. I can remember her. And I said, well, the thing is, I've been to second-hand shop in Fleetwood, and I've got myself a life jacket off a Fleetwood trolley. It stinks of fish, love, but it'll do the job. She said, oh, no, you don't need to bring your own life jacket. You'll be fine. I said, yes, but I need to get back to my family. I love my family, and I don't want to be stuck out in flipping Europe just for the sake of a few nights Christmas shopping. No, you won't get stuck. Our ferries are running as normal. She said, we're an island. We need to be fed. We need supplies to come in. There's nothing going to change. And that is not what they were putting out on the media. So again, I recorded it and put it out. So I did stuff like that, but I did it with humour, because Mrs. Battersby is quite funny, and she can get where Castor Oil had struggled, because everybody lets a little old lady in, don't they? Nobody wants to upset her. I even got Anna Soubry, which was a blinder. I couldn't do it for laughing, really. I mean, she came out with utter tripe. I mean, I wouldn't tell you because she'd probably deny it, but she actually told me at one stage, when I rang up as a normal person pretending to be a constituent, which is a bit naughty but Sodom, she said I wouldn't be able to use my house in Austria. I wouldn't be able to get there, which is ridiculous. So I did stunts like that, and then I've done impressions of like Nicola Sturgeon, who's a crackpot to me. So I'd do things like I'd come on in a tartan rug, and I'd go, and we're going to have great changes here in Scotland. We're not going to have the West Highland White no more. No, we're going to have the Euro Terrier. And I kept rebranding, you know, the Euro Terrier and stuff like that. And we're going to have our annual general meeting at Euro Disney. I am not Scottish, I'm Irish. And so I just took the piss out of them. And one of the best ones was coming up to the election. I thought, they were chucking everything at us, Martin. They chucked absolutely, they were dragging old relics out from House of Lords to tell us how we were wrong voting for Leave. And the one that stuck out in my mind, I'll never forget as long as I live, is Tony Blair and John Major walking over that bridge. And I looked at Tony Blair and I thought, dear God, it's John Major. Who's that? It looks like Gollum. It's like Gollum in a suit. So I thought, how do you get round these big guns? So I went on and I just do it off the cuff. I don't rehearse it. And I went, have you just seen that on telly? Tony Blair. He hasn't aged well, has he? Tony Blair and John Major walking together, telling us how we ought to stay in EU. Eh? We should all listen to Tony. Didn't he go into Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction and come back with 2 catapults and a slingshot? We should all listen. And John Major saying to Edwina Currie when he should have been running country. Oh, we should all listen to them. So I ridiculed them because it was ridiculous. And even when they brought Beckham out, I said, oh, they've run out of scientists now. They've run out of their own wit sportsmen. So I just ridiculed the campaign. And it worked. And my following went up and up and up and up. And it just creeps up each week. And I do it by being as honest as I can be. And if I get something wrong, Martin, I'll post and say, oh, hang on, I've posted that. It's wrong. I've made a mistake. Be honest. Keep them entertained to keep them interested, because if you keep serious, politics is pretty boring. Yeah. So you've got to break it up a bit.
Do you think, June, that one of the things that came out of this was certainly my kind of feeling on the ground was people felt so abandoned or ridiculed by the media when all that stuff was coming out from the likes of Diane Abbott, David Lammy, about racism and Nazis and all of that, and we were duped by buses because we're so thick, and we fell for slogans. I mean, I always felt that there was a huge latent anger against the establishment because people don't want to be called thick and racist, do they?
No.
So people were voting with information and people were voting in good faith, but that was never really accepted, was it?
No. I think what they misunderstood was that we wanted to leave anyway. You see, you get something like the EU, we've been in it since the 70s. So in the 70s when we went in, I was too young to vote and I didn't really care. I had other fish to fry. You know, I wanted to buy a new top at the weekend. It didn't matter to me. And it didn't matter to me while I was in, apart from the fact my husband followed it all and said how much it cost us and things. What I think they underestimated is, I'm from a working class family, a terraced house in Blackburn. That's where I grew up. And I've never lost touch with my roots, because no matter where you go or how you end up in life, know your roots. And towns like Blackburn are peppered all over this country, filled with decent, honest working people from all backgrounds. Immigrants, British born and bred, doesn't matter. Decent, honest people who have just been forgotten. Because the Labour Party is a bloody joke. The Labour Party is now, it's like an elitist club that attracts well-shod, well-paid politicians, journalists, media personalities, and the lovies. It's like the Islington set. And we all know that nobody really cares what goes on outside London. And the rest of the country know that. And we're sick of it. We're sick of it. And I've only got to look at the people that follow me. I've got pensioners in their 80s. I've got friends. I've got people who are retired multimillionaire builders. I've got people who have sold out in industry. It's a real mixed bag of people who all feel the same, that Britain... I watched a 2-hour soul-destroying video of Jean-Claude Juncker in his 2015 President's Address. I mean, my eyes are crossing. I'm watching that much stuff and reading that much stuff. And I'm listening to him droning on. And thank the Lord I did, because there was a 2-minute segment where he said, some people here may not agree with me, but I know that Britain does not need the EU, but the EU needs Britain. Now, bingo. So I videoed it. I cut it and videoed it and shared it, and then eventually that ended up by someone far more technical than me on YouTube. But when the President of the European Union admits that in his President's Address, do you really need any more proof? Do you really need to go back to the days of 1952 from Jean Monnet, when he wrote to his friends saying the people of Europe should be guided towards a super-state without realising why? It can be disguised as having economic benefit and lead to full federalisation. Disguised. Why would you disguise anything if it was any good? Why would you have to disguise it? You wouldn't. The best thing you can be if it's good is honest and say, look, this is a wonderful thing to be part of. Join it.
So from my point of view, I mean, obviously, you know my story. I kind of jacked in my work as a journalist to stand up for the Brexit Party. I was elected as an MEP, and I got inside the machine, inside the Death Star, as I called it. You know, Guy Verhofstadt was the Darth Vader. We had some stars. But the fact of the matter is this: the more we saw, the more it was obvious that this was a doomed enterprise. The corruption was manifest, the benefit for Britain, the cost for Britain was obvious. When you lay out the facts, it was just absolutely, resolutely clear. Why is it, do you think, though, that so many in Britain and the media are so wedded to the European project? What hold has it got over them?
Well, there's all this talk about paymasters and what are they getting out of it. I think once you get to a certain level of income, like say Adam Bolton, who'll be an extremely well-paid journalist, I think there's a lot of educated people who won't be touched by whether we're in or we're out. It won't affect them. But it's affecting working class people and has been doing for decades, because as we get our manufacturing sucked out of us because it's made more attractive to have your factory in Eastern Europe, I mean, we are basically just we're being raped. I mean, what I can't understand is the total corruption from James Dyson's vacuum cleaner. I mean, with his vacuum cleaner, his bagless vacuum cleaner was killing Miele and other people because it was a really good design. So what did the EU do? They changed the test. The test was to use a Hoover, empty till it was full and see what the suction was. So they changed the test to a sterile environment where they only sucked in, because everybody, your average housewife knows that a bagged vacuum cleaner, the suction goes as the bag fills up, but it doesn't with a bagless, it didn't with Dyson's. So what did they do? They changed the test. And look at VW and Merck with these emissions. It's cheating. And the EU is set up for Germany to thrive. It's Germany trading as the EU. And unfortunately, it's not a club. It's an expensive members club, because to be in it, you've only got Britain, France and Germany that's really leaving any amount of money in. Britain is the second biggest contributor. Why do we need to be in it when we've got the greatest global reach of any nation? We reach more countries than any other country in Europe. The thing about the EU is, all you have to look at, the French, the Spanish, the Italians, they sit on their own beaches, they drink their own wine and they eat their own cheese. We use everybody's stuff. They drive their own cars. You drive through France, you'll see Renaults and Citroens. You drive through Germany, it'll be VW, it'll be Mercedes, BMW. Drive through Britain, we've got everybody's stuff. We are the biggest consumer market. We have the most credit card debt in Europe. That's why loads of people have done trade deals with the EU to access the British market, because we are spenders. The French and the Italians and the Austrians, they don't spend the money on homes like we. They don't buy new Venetian blinds and new suites and new carpets. They buy one good item and make it last. They don't spend like we spend. They've started spending a bit more, but we are the best consumers in Europe. We are the marketplace to get.
Okay, and I want to move on now, if I can, to the BBC. We've spoken about your wonderful comedic complaints, but on serious matters, certainly in terms of how they represented Brexit, let's go, if we can, to the night of the 31st of January. I was in Parliament Square. I was on the stage with all of with Nigel and all the rest, and it was an absolute landscape of Union Jacks. There was no trouble. It was a beautiful party atmosphere. Yeah. And how did it come across on the telly?
Well, they didn't even cover it. Didn't they have some woman? They just kept showing sound bites of various Remain situations across the country. The BBC didn't even cover it. They didn't even show it. It's been, all the good stuff's been played down and basically ignored. And it's been absolutely abysmal. Unless Boris gets a grip of what's going on with our media, we're going nowhere. Because it's a sad, sad day when you've got to access Sky News Australia to have rational debate, because you won't get it from Sky News Great Britain. It's just, it's the British Broadcasting Corporation is the worst. Sky is second. And, I mean, the BBC to me looks like a Marxist cult because they'll support anything that is divisive. And I think that they've gone to pieces. People are cancelling the licence fee now because there's... Nicola showed me a video on Twitter where they're showing kids, it's the CB, whatever it is, the kids club thing, trying to show you how Britishness, like tea comes from India and it's not so British, and the sugar came from the Caribbean. Well, you know, that was the same for most of flipping Europe. Why are you singling Great Britain out? So
that was horrible. That was horrible histories. And actually, it was on CBBC. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was actually broadcast on the 31st of January. It was the same day. It came out on the same day as Brexit. And it appeared to everybody, but it was a deliberate troll. It was, here was the day when we were going to become independent. It was Nish Kumar, the comedian, who I think is about as funny as Ebola. That's a separate story. And he was basically saying, well, and I think this is an interesting point. And we've seen with Black Lives Matter, and we've seen with the fact Jeremy Corbyn wanted to change the entire British curriculum to only focus on slavery, the terrible deeds committed by the empire, by the colonies. And I think there is an unpicking and a rewriting and a repackaging of British history to somehow completely erode the sense of British positivity, the sense of pride in the flag, in Queen and country. And I think it's insidious. Do you agree?
I do. Because I think, I don't know what they're trying to achieve with it, but we seem, particularly in England, I mean, if you're Welsh, you can stand up and say you're Welsh, you can fly a Welsh flag, you can do what you want. Scotland's the same. They're allowed to be glad that they're Scottish. You don't have to be proud. You can just be glad. I'm glad I'm English. And I'm English by a default of birth. But I was born in a crappy little terraced house in a mill town. This is no privileged upbringing. This is like, you're on the planet. It's nothing to do with your skin colour. It's certainly nothing to do with your religion. It's to do with you. We're all individuals. And they seem to be trying to eradicate individuality. And you can't do it because we're all different. If you gave everybody £1,000 today and said, right, come back in 1 week, tell me what you've done with your £1,000, someone would have invested it, someone would have blown it, someone will still have it, because we all make different choices. And it's the thing that really annoys me, it's our choice. It's our choice to want to be proud to be British. I mean, I could have gone off and lived in Austria. Well, I was like that. I was watching things unfold and I thought, what do we do here? And there was just that something. I didn't have it, whatever you need to go and uproot and actually live somewhere else. I've got the resources to do that. I couldn't leave Britain. So we made a conscious effort in November to sell our house in Austria because of the journey and what have you. But I could have made it the other way. I could have thought, go there. But I wanted to stay in Britain. I like Britain. I like the way my country's run. I love my county because I think Lancashire people are particularly friendly and Yorkshire people are very similar. And I don't want to let go of that. I miss the banter that we have naturally. And the other thing that's been absolutely eroded is our sense of humour and free speech. I mean, you probably think I'm quite outspoken, but believe it or not, I actually think very carefully what I say and how I say it, because it will get misinterpreted and I have to think back, will this be brought up by Facebook? Will I lose my page because I've said X? And I think the worst insult, and it is, the reason people are angry about it is because it's an insult. It's an insult to call people you don't know racist. It's an insult by David Lammy. And if you don't think it's an insult, I did a video on it. Tell me why it's got 900,000 views if you don't think we feel insulted. To turn around because we voted for Brexit and call me a Nazi, when the Nazi was actually a socialist party. The Nazis weren't conservatives. The Nazis weren't, they were a socialist party. And they believed in one rule and one way only. We're actually saying, let's be Britain, let's be free, let's trade with the world, let's deal with the world, let's not forget our Commonwealth. You couldn't be more open about things than wanting to Brexit. Brexit isn't insular, the way they put it across. That's just a selling job that the media have come up with and politicians. We are the most open-minded people who want to Brexit, people who want to trade with the rest of the world. That's how I see it.
As well, June, because you talk about democracy. I remember when I was sat there in Strasbourg and we watched Ursula von der Leyen elected as president on a ticket of one. She wasn't even on the ticket the day before. All of those candidates weren't deemed preferable. They couldn't be controlled. And somewhere else in the same week, a president was elected on a ticket of one. It was Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Isn't it funny how they talk about democracy and yet when it comes down to it, there blatantly wasn't any? And you talk, don't you, about it in North Korea, they get state TV propaganda, but they don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
In Britain, we have to pay.
We have to pay for it.
Let's talk about the license fee. I'm hedging my bets. You think that should go?
Yeah. I think it's an archaic thing. Michael Portillo put it the best. He does that great train journeys across the world, and he said in a very calm manner, it's outdated. There was no agenda. He wasn't saying it because the BBC had said things he didn't like. He just said the system was outdated because all the people that he works with are young and they all access news and programmes from their laptops, from the internet. And I think if the BBC want to survive, they ought to be made to be accountable, because at the end of the day, they've made some clusterfucks, haven't they? Let's face it. I mean, Jimmy Savile as a children's entertainer, eh? Rolf Harris, can you tell what it is yet? Yes, that's why we've got you in court, Rolf. So, do you know what I mean? The BBC gave us these people, and they've not really made any apology for it. They haven't said, oh, God, honestly, what a clanger that is. We're really sorry. No, we're just like, shove it under the carpet and move on. So why should we trust them to continue brainwashing our kids about anti-British stuff? At the end of the day, if you want to access the BBC and you believe that the BBC should be funded, then it should be just like it is with Sky, your choice to buy. And it should be made to stand on its own 2 feet.
So if we're in broad agreement, and a growing portion of the population are, I mean, there was a YouGov report out recently saying that trust in the British media is collapsing. I think we were like the second lowest in the world. We're in a bad way, I think, with trust. I think Brexit began our awakening, if you like. That continued through COVID-19. I think it's really kind of shone a light on the gotcha nature of journalists. I think it's certainly continued through the Black Lives Matter period, where anybody who did a modicum of basic research, even on their own GoFundMe page, could clearly see from the beginning they wanted to abolish the police, end capitalism, whatever that means. I mean, they were happy to take up £1.2 million off people while also wanting to end capitalism. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to me. But if we have the media that we have, you're a sort of citizen journalist who's become a Facebook phenomenon. What's the future landscape of British media looking like, do you think? And how, if people want to get involved as you have, what would your advice be to them to get set up and rocking?
Well, I think the reason that I've done okay is because I made a conscious decision. I thought, I get sick of talking to people behind badges. You know, they've got an emblem or an avatar and there's no personal details. So I try and be as open and as honest as I can without attracting too much. I do get abuse. I get a lot of abuse, but I tend to look at the messages when they come in. And if I can have some fun with them, I'll do a reply that's quite humorous and you know, put some in the place. But the reason I'm popular is I'm not good at anything. I'm just saying what everybody's thinking. I'm just saying it out loud because my messages tell me that. Oh, God, that's just what I've been saying. And that's repeated thousands of times a month. So the thing to do is if you want to make a difference, show your face. Let people see who you are. You don't have to say where you are. You can be a bit more exclusive with that. But show your humanity. You know, I put dog videos up, and I'll tell funny stories about my personal life, like me cooking. You know, when I'm doing what I think is a wonderful paella, and Dave calls it fisherman's yuck, or you know, if I'm doing like some sort of casserole, it calls it slop in a pot. But it humanises the person that you're dealing with, and never be too big for your boots. Get back to people. Most of the good pages, there's really good pages like Leave EU and Get Britain Out and all these, they're really good. Get Britain Out's an exception because they're really good at emailing. But I'm the only blogger that actually gives you some news and say, look what's going on here. Get emailing. I'm the only one, and I'm always saying it in my WhatsApp group with a few movers and shakers. Why don't you ask people to email? Because knowledge is nothing without action. And the only action we've got in a passive way is to email. What you want, you don't want to reply from your MP. Don't be so pretentious as to want to reply. Just get the bloody pile growing. So, because the left are doing it. I'm in a lefty group as a spinster with frizzy hair and 6 cats living in a VW camper. So I'm in this lefty group. So I see how they work. They have templates made. They are organised. Oh, boy, are they organised. But no matter how organised they are, no matter how good they are at doing it, the truth wins because the people still feel the way they feel. And coming up to the general election...
I've got another question for you now, June, and it's this. You obviously have you've got what I would call, in a very flattering sense, you've got the common touch. You say it as you see it. Are you going to move into politics? I mean, what about June? What about June for Prime Minister? I mean, you talk a great point. People want the message. What about getting involved in mainstream politics? Take it a stage further. That's what I did. If I can do it, you can do it.
Well, why would I though? At the moment, I'm a neutral body, so I'm trusted. I'm not a member of any political party. I've never joined anything. Coming up to the European elections, I went to Blackpool, and it was Lewis Goodall. Lewis Goodall kept interviewing people in the crowd, and they were all a bit tongue-tied. I was getting so bloody frustrated, so I come marching down like Boda here. I look like my soddy nan, actually, when I look back. I came marching down the steps, just like my nan used to when she was getting me in when I was being a bugger. And Lewis Goodall's there, and so he turns his mic to me, and he said... I said, we've voted for Brexit, we've voted to leave, and we're still dangling on here. He said, you sound very angry. I said, wouldn't you be angry if you were still having to fight for something you've already won? We've already won. That's the thing here. We're discussing it like the fight's still going on. It's like having VE Day and then still going out with a bloody tank. Why? We're finished. We're done. It's wrong. We're being dragged along because of ineptitude by politicians who don't get it. I mean, Theresa May, I blogged that she was going to let us down badly by giving the EU 39 billion. I blogged that. The day I blogged it, I got a 30-day ban for a joke I put on. How strange. I've always got the truth out, and I've got it out fairly quickly. But when there's no parties anymore, we've got politicians who are more interested in not offending people than being right by people. We've got the anomaly of grooming gangs. We all know what they are, but nobody discusses it. It's just about getting discussed because we haven't to upset someone, because no matter who you are, if you've got a bad set of people in your crowd, that particular crowd mustn't be disturbed. You mustn't discuss that. You must allow them to have their bad people. It's wrong. You won't balance things out by creating imbalance, and that's what we've got. And it really, really annoys me that anybody can even consider Great Britain as racist. Because if we were racist, the boats on the Channel crossing would be going the other way. They'd say, oh, don't go there, they're horrible. You'll never survive. You'll never be able to make a life because the people are just so awful. No, they don't. They come flooding in illegally. They're smuggling them in with that nice. They're trying to get here, even when they get here and they've nothing, because this country welcomes everyone and always has done. And it's a stinker, an absolute stinker, to be called a fascist or a racist because you want to rule your own land, to have your own laws that suit your people. I mean, we've been raped. Look at our fishing. You've got one Dutch vessel.
June, let me get a word in. I want to ask you now about that. You're pretty good at making predictions. You seem to have called most things right. What's going to happen with Brexit? Are we going to get a proper Brexit as you or I would think of it, or we're going to get the cursed Brexit in name only, the Brino, or are we going to become a fully independent coastal nation with complete control over our fisheries? Is the level playing field going to be kicked into touch? How do you see it playing out?
I think fishing and defence will be the sacrificial lamb along with Northern Ireland. That's how I see it. I think we'll get some good bits. We'll technically have Brexited. It won't be anywhere near a Brexit I want. We won't get the fishing back. We might get some. But the fishing, what people don't understand about our fishing, we are an island with a massive coastline and with the best waters. Cold water fish are always more tasty than Mediterranean fish. What people don't realise is 25% of the British fishing quota is sucked up by one Dutch factory vessel. It gets 25% of it. So that means we're only getting 75% of our own. And that is done by an EU law, which means you can register a vessel in Hull. So you register it in Hull. It's like buying a car from Nottingham and driving it back to Manchester. It's a Manchester car. Once it comes back, it's going to knock around Manchester. But it came from Nottingham. Yeah. And that's what they do with the fishing. It's allowed to fish in our waters on our quota, not even a European quota. It employs a European crew. It goes back to a European port, and it is of no benefit to Britain. And I don't think that's going to change. I think, you know, I deal with Veterans for Britain. I deal with quite a few different people in the WhatsApp group that I'm in. And there's a lot of people doing enormous amounts of work, far more work than I do, writing documents and you know, Brexit facts for you. Enormous amount of work by Lee there. But I have to read all that and then condense it and think, right, bullet point it. And I'll think of the bullet points that I can get across, because what I try and do is Facebook people have habits. They come on and off at different times. That's why I'm not a big believer in going live, because you're waiting for people to click on. And if you do go live and they've seen it's been live, they think they've missed something and scroll past it. So I think keep it as tight as you can, keep it condensed. Pat Condell was one of the best. He never goes above 8 minutes and he gets a lot of views. So, and some of my biggest shares are short videos. So I think you've got to get the message out, try and be honest. I think the good thing about all this delay and what I call the wilderness years with Theresa May is it's given time for the EU to show its bare arse, hasn't it, really? We all know we're staring a baboon's arsehole in the face when we look at the EU now, because there's been nothing has gone on over the last 2 or 3 years that's made anyone turn around and go, oh wow, I didn't know the EU did that. Everything can have holes picked in it. And if the EU was any good, there'd be some decent arguments in my message box, instead of calling me an old gammon, a trout, a bottle blonde numpty, a northern twit. I mean, that's what they're coming back with. You know, so the EU's that good, that's the best you can come up with. I'm an old gammon trout. Well, quelle surprise. I'll stick with my Brexit vote, thank you. Well,
Jun, you've been amazing. You know, we could talk all day, and we should do this again. You know, please come back on Unlocked again. You can probably hear now, we've got someone chopping a tree down behind the house. You know, it's been quiet as a church mouse around here throughout the entire bleeding lockdown. And now they're hammering, they're sawing. Anyway, that's a natural endpoint. Thank you so much, Jun. Come on the show again and keep on keeping on. Get the truth out there, because they called us uneducated, they called us thick. But in actual fact, knowledge is power, and you've been pumping that out now, left, right, and centre for years. So thank you very much.
See you again. Thank you, Martin. All right, bye.